So, hello everyone, and depending which part of the world you're in, then good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. And a warm welcome to those of you joining us in the timeless world of YouTube. So, warm welcome. This is the second of this new series of teachings on Maitreya, on Buddha nature. That's the title of the book I made. That's a commentary on the Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra, the famous Buddha nature teachings from Asanga and Buddha Maitreya, also called the Ratnagotra Vibhanga. So this is just the second. It's a very profound topic. We'll come to that just after the prayers. It was maybe secret isn't exactly the right word. A very protected, a very guarded topic in Dharma in India. So it's very, very special. And it's, what do they say, modern English, a game changer for many things. So let's start with a very, very wonderful attitude and really do our best to think in humility, in loving kindness, in compassion about all the sentient beings in this world, in other worlds, and their condition, the suffering that's there, but also the potential, which is very much the topic of Buddha nature teachings, the potential for love and care and harmony and all the good human qualities that's there, and realize what an extraordinary opportunity we have to be alive, to be human, to meet authentic Dharma teachings, and to be able to practice them. So with all that in mind, let's do our starting prayers. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on, until we reach the very heart of enlightenment, through the practice of generosity and all six transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality, to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every being be well. May they live long and be healthy, be well provided for, have good friends, find respect. May they live in places of peace and plenty, and most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for those good circumstances to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural, sacred well-being totally beyond suffering, and attain the great equanimity that's free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata Shame Shamavati Shameta Shatra Om Kurim Arajite Karota Keyorite Jowati Olayane Bishudane Male Malapa Naye Kukure Kaka Grase Grasana Omuki Paramuki Amuki Shamedavani Sawa Graha Pandanane Negri Tva Sawa Bava Pravadina Vimukta Marapasha Savitva Buddha Mudra Anukatita Sava Mare Butsarita Parishude Bigashantu Sava Mara Kamane. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our heads on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain us, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. So today we'll pick up from where we left off in the verses, but as I said in the first session, then the introduction is very important. And when I say introduction, I mean the introduction that our great Kagyu teachers give before teaching the text itself, their introduction. And in particular, in the book that you have, the copy, the PDF, then it's Trungpa Rinpoche's introduction. So in there are some important background points, context points. And one of them that I touched on last time is about the style of explanation. And you heard that there are two styles. There's one that's how to make it simple. One's for academics, one's for contemplatives, let's put it that way. One's for meditators, one's for studiers. And they can be quite different. And in general, in Dharma, these days, as we meet it, and throughout the history of Buddhism, I think even going back to the 50 years immediately after the Buddha, we find this kind of already, as I think you find in, well, certainly most religions, and probably more generally in life, this split between those who treasure the concepts, who live by the book, who the words, the ideas, the rules, that's the most important, and others who want more the living spirit of the thing. So as we've studied in quite a few of my courses, because it's a pet topic of mine, I confess, then there was a huge development of study, writing, development of Buddhist universities. The whole conceptual side of Dharma really became very, very big. Some might say too big. About 500 years after the Buddha, 400 or 500 years. And so anyway, there's always been that, and people who get really into it. And then there have been the practices, the meditators. Now, we do need to know the difference between these two things and what is healthy. So if you've heard me go on about this in other courses, you can get a quick coffee and croissant, or have a 10-minute nap or 5-minute nap. But it's so true and it's so important. So examples like armchair travelers. What do they call them? Armchair pundits as well. People who've studied a lot about a place or a journey to a place. They've read lots and lots of books, got all the maps. They can sit down, and if there's a club of people who do the same thing, they can have a meal together, they can meet up once a week and talk about it all in greater and more detail, and feed each other information and so on. But they never left the country. And then there are the people who have gone traveling, and who've lived the experience. As some people who travel and actually stay a long time in the country, they learn the language, they blend in, they disappear into the country, they are imbibed with, they know how to cook the food, they know how to speak the language, they know how to dance with the people when they dance, they become part of it, it is them. So what we have in Dharma, and we'll come to this when we come to the second Vajra point, is called the second of the 7 main chapters here, which is about the Dharma. We'll come to see how there's Dharma as words and Dharma as realization, which is the same topic. You only get the realization when you practice. And it's only when you practice that the words come to life. And you realize, gosh, what that sort of algebra of Dharma was about is this. And you're living it, and it's happening to you. And it becomes incredibly meaningful. The point I'm trying to make is about abstractions. It's about how we can be in a Dharma world, just like, for instance, let's take something probably most of you know, Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. There's always somebody who doesn't, but I think most of you have got some kind of clue, right? So none of that really exists. I mean, you can't get an EasyJet or a Ryanair to Middle Earth and all those places and meet those people. It's a creation of concepts, but a very complex one. So once you've read the book and seen the film and so on, then you know that, this place is here, this tower's over there, the elves live here, the people who ride the horses, the Rohan people, they're there, they look like that, the other ones have got pointy ears, and then you've got, the whole thing is real for you. You can negotiate it, you can talk with people about it. We can make an abstract world that's so complicated. And so we've got Dharma terms, we have all incredible, huge vocabulary, ideas, 5 stages of the path, and Buddha's Pure Lands, and this and that, a history with the Buddha and all the life of the Buddha. It's just ideas. Very wonderful ideas. So like the maps and the travel books and people's own stories of travel and everything, all the information will be incredibly useful if you actually set out on the journey. We need to know so much. We need to know it clearly, we need to know enough. But then the ideas need to become realities. And because the reality of what we call Buddha nature, is profound, then it wasn't so much talked about as it is these days in what you can find on internet and in books. In the past, it was a very sacred and secret topic. When we look at the people who brought Dharma to Tibet, if we look at Atisha, for instance. Last week we were doing Tonglen from the 7-point mind training. This was a secret teaching. When Atisha was alive, he only passed it on to very close disciples with a seal of secrecy, not to make it public for so many generations, because the Tonglen at the time was taught along with Buddha nature, the nature of mind, and as sort of the basic state of mind you're in when you do Tonglen. You become Buddha, you're doing it from that place. When we looked last week at the history of transmission of this text, we saw that Maitreya, who was one of Marpa's gurus, Maitreya, saw this light coming from a stupa and retrieved the text, a copy of the text from inside the stupa. And even though he understood the logic of the words, the concepts, the algebra, the terminology, he knew he didn't have it 100%. So he went into deep meditation to get the real transmission from Maitreya. So he was one of Marpa's gurus. But when you look into Maitreya's life and his writings and whatever teachings we've got left from him, you'd think, having found this wonderful text, there'd be a lot, and it will be kind of the big deal in his teachings. It's barely mentioned. Barely mentioned. But what we find in some of the biographies from Maitreya's disciples is that he used this text that we're studying as a basis for pointing out the nature of mind. So I think many of you know in our Kagyu tradition and in the deep traditions, we do foundation practices, Ngondro, we do shamatha, vipassana, all to prepare us, to make us ready, to make it possible for us to sit with our teacher and be awakened to the Buddha nature of our mind. That's often called pointing out. So Maitreya would use this text as a basis for pointing out the nature of mind to his disciples who were ready. So anyway, what that's led to is a meditation tradition where everything that's in this text, we bring it back to the mind, to meditation experience, and we make it come alive in an inner way. There's another tradition where it's theory to do with logic and debate and argument and writing books and writing counter books, and different Buddhist traditions who think, no, he meant this, and others who say, no, I think he meant more like that. But it's all has to be on a conceptual level. How are you going to disagree with somebody without words and concepts? Are you going to sit there with silent minds to see who's right? We are funny creatures, us humans, in terms of communication. You can have somebody right there in front of your nose, and how much comes across. Isn't it strange? Isn't it strange? So we have words and ideas, and it's a complex world. So please think about this when we have these two traditions. In our Kagyu tradition, we try as best we can to follow a contemplative understanding of what is being said in this text. Now, leaving aside our own tradition's introduction to the text as a whole, within the text itself, there's a good beginning, good main body of the text, good end. And the beginning we looked at in the last session, which is first the title of the text, and then after that the author's homage to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And then we look briefly at this text has 7 main sections, which are called 7 Vajra abodes. And so let's pick it up there. I think I mentioned it last time, but Vajra is a very Hollywood weapon. You could make fantastic, what do they call them, special effects with a Vajra. You don't really need to do much if you've got one. I think lots of you have probably got them on your shrine, but they're not Vajras. They are, how can you say, models of Vajras. The real Vajra is the weapon that Indra has. You hold it up, and all the other weapons become powerless. I mean, it's not like a sword where you need to, or other weapons that you need to be quite active. Nothing, it just overcomes by its very presence. And nothing can destroy it. It's quite a small thing. I mean, in terms of weapons, Indra could have much better things. A long spear, or arrows, bows and arrows. So it works by its innate power. It can destroy anything, and it cannot be destroyed by anything. That's in the legends. You don't get to see Indra that often, so who knows? But that's in the legends. So these are called 7 Vajra points. Why? It's because, as we'll discover at the end of the 3rd chapter of this text, where we look at the 3 refuges, then Dharma is a strange thing. It's all true. All the Dharma teachings are true in their context. But the very nature of Dharma is to be disposable. You have teachings that suit you where you are. They help you to grow. But it's like children growing up. The old clothes, they're too small. They don't work anymore. You need bigger clothes, different clothes. And so Dharma progresses. There are different teachings at different levels. And at the end, all of it's thrown away. You don't need the ideas anymore. You don't need the methods anymore, because you reach the goal. Khenpo Sotim used to say it's like a ladder that gets you onto the roof. You know, the roof of Tibetan houses, they're flat. And it's a nice place to be, sit in the sun. So once you've got up the ladder, you're on the roof. You don't need it anymore. Excuse me. So Dharma, nearly all Dharma is like that. It has its place, right time, right people. But these 7 Vajra points are about what is always true, behind what we need to know for our journey. This is about what is changeless. And indeed, when we made the first translation of this text in English, and it's called the Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra, the treatise concerning the highest continuum in the Mahayana. It's not a very jazzy title for a book, in English. So we asked Trungpa Rinpoche, what can we call it that would be, an approachable title? And he called it the changeless nature. He said, call it the changeless nature, which is what all these 7 chapters will be about. Always true. In this world, in the time of this Buddha, in the time of other Buddhas, anywhere in existence, whatever it is, wherever it is, this is always true. What is Buddha? What is Dharma? What is Sangha? What is Buddha nature? What are enlightened? What's enlightenment? What's enlightened qualities? What's enlightened activity? Always true. This never changes. So these are 7 Vajra points. Those 7 Vajra points are in 2 main sections. The first 3, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, are presented as a fruition, as a result. We'll need to come back to that because not in the worldly sense, but they are a result. And the last 4 points, Buddha nature, enlightenment, enlightened qualities, enlightened activity, are cause for that result. So we have 7 Vajra points, which fall into, I couldn't do 2 sections. I don't know if this makes any sense. 3, the first 3 and the last 4. So 2 groups, result, cause. Now if we go to the text, I've got to fiddle with my screen now so I can get 2 screens next to each other. Okay. It's there. Need that. Don't need that. Good. Okay. So now all I need to tell you for everyone who registered for this course, I sent out a PDF, right? And thank you very much to Neil, who so delicately in the last session pointed out that the page numbers are in a bit of a mess. And so it's true. I thought I'd sorted it out, but in fact, I think I probably made it worse. So all of the text is there. And on each page, there should be a page number at the top. So don't look at the bottom of the PDF page numbers, but at the top in the original book, the page numbers, which I think could be correct. Let me just check. Probably not. No, they're not. So, okay, this is confusing. It's a mess. Sorry about that. But if you've got the PDF that I sent you and you're following it, then we're looking at verse 1 now. And on the top of that page, I think it should say 24. Page 24, Maitreya on Buddha nature, if you're following. So I'm getting a new scan done professionally, and I'll send that out to everyone in a couple of weeks' time. In the meantime, we have to make do with this. So verse 1 says the entire body of this treatise can be condensed into the following 7 Vajra abodes. You need to know this. You can't come out of weeks and weeks and weeks of studying this text without knowing at least the 7 main points. So please memorize. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, that's easy. Buddha nature, number 4. And then enlightenment, enlightened qualities, and enlightened activity. So these are our 7 Vajra abodes. And verse 2, which I touched on last time, it says these are in a natural order, and one should know the first 3 come from this chapter and the last 4 from that chapter of the Dharmacharya Raja Sutra, and I talked about that last time. No need to go back. But in verse 2, it says, these are in a natural order. Well, they are, but it might not be so obvious to you what that natural order is, so I need to explain it. And it's explained in verse 3. From the Buddha comes the Dharma. Can you put your hand up if that makes sense? Yeah, okay. Well, it does, in the way we think of Buddha and the way we think of Dharma, because the Buddha taught the Dharma. But when we get into the chapter on the Buddha and the chapter on the Dharma, you'll see it's much deeper. It's not about somebody teaching. It's about a quality of the purest depths of mind to teach. In all of us, in any of us. It's in whatever you want to call it, the universe, the fabric of everything, which we call Buddha, is the light, the wisest, purest, and that has the power to teach. So from the Buddha comes the Dharma. From the Dharma, once the Dharma is being taught, that makes the formation of a Sangha. Sangha meaning the body of those, the community of those who hold those truths. Not blah, blah, blah truths, not word truths, conceptual truths, who have realized, made real. Realized in the sense of made real, not realized in the ordinary English sense, where something, you realize happens in a few seconds and that's it. Realized means made real inside themselves. So from the Buddha comes the Dharma, from the Dharma comes the realized Sangha. And then because there is realized Sangha, like our great masters in our lineage, then they can help us discover that we have inside ourselves what they have made real themselves. This pure nature, Buddha nature of mind, that they are, that they manifest, that they teach about, and that they can lead us towards finding. Through the Sangha, the realized Sangha, then we can discover and work with our own Buddha nature. So from the Sangha, the presence of the jhana nature. So that's the wisdom nature, the essence. Once we discover our own Buddha nature, first we believe in it, then we work on the basis of that belief, and then bit by bit it starts to shine more and more, then it becomes stable. Then when it's 100% present, there's no ego, there's no personal story left at all, then we become enlightened. So from that there will be supreme enlightenment. That's number 5. Once there is, so enlightenment has the qualities, so they're called powers and so forth. There are 10 powers, 18 distinctive qualities, 4 fearlessnesses, and then 32 special qualities, 64 altogether. So they are the qualities, that's the 6th point, endowed, and because of those qualities that comes automatically with enlightenment, then there's the ability to teach others, help people to accomplish the good of each and every one. So that's verse 3. I think that's pretty straightforward. So now if you, now I'm in my version, page 26, with a big title, The Refuges. So the next point we need to understand is what are called cause refuges and result refuges. For most Buddhists who take refuge, then what they take refuge in, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, is what we call causal refuges. They're causal refuges because you taking refuge in them will be the cause for your own progress. Refuge is a powerful factor And so I can't keep saying it all the way through all the talks, but a word explanation, an experiential explanation, applies to nearly every verse in 400 verses of this text. So I'm sure many of you here have taken refuge. And because you've taken refuge, then your commitment when you've taken refuge as a ceremony is to take refuge every day afterwards. So I hope, I can't say I'm sure, but I hope that everyone here is not just once a day, but every day taking refuge, but really and truly from an experiential point of view. Action after action, hour after hour, are we taking refuge in samsara or in Buddha Dhamma Sangha? How are we living our lives? Are we living it for money, comfort, friendship, praise, and all of these things that make up for worldly life? Centered around ego, self-centeredness, or when we've taken refuge, and especially as bodhisattvas, we've taken bodhisattva refuge, then theoretically every hour, every minute, every action is done with a motivation for enlightenment and to help all beings. So if we're honest, if you had an implanted device that's measuring everything you do, every thought, every intention, every action, and says, okay, Ken, this action, basically you were taking refuge in samsara. And Ken, this action, you were basically spot on bodhisattva. And we counted them through the day, and we made a kind of what they call them, pie chart. You know, pie chart. Then real refuge, how much of the 360 degrees is your refuge in a day? So the refuges we take are the result of our progress. Each action we do, which is really the way we're doing it, why we're doing it, is with enlightenment in mind. Then that will be the cause for our progress. Every action we do with self-centeredness in mind just keeps us in samsara. It carries on the samsaric status quo, the flow. It doesn't change anything. So Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, our three refuges are called causal refuges, because when we really live according to that refuge, then it's the cause for our own awakening and total liberation. And Akon Rinpoche used to say so many times, you know, if you could really take refuge, it would be the only practice you'd ever need. You wouldn't need anything else if you really understood it and applied it. So that's just a few words so you understand causal refuge. So we take refuge in the Buddha in a way that makes sense to us. It's what we need the Buddha for. Buddha's a teacher. Without the Buddha's teachings, we have no understanding where we're going, what it's all about, how to do it, the methods, the techniques, and so on. So we need the teacher and the teaching and the community that hold and transmit over the ages those teachings from Buddha, historical Buddha, who is long gone. And then we can understand the three kayas. That's hard. Once people really start to try and understand the three kayas, many, many questions come up. It's a deeper topic. But anyway, that kind of understanding the historical Buddha and the Dharma we have in the scriptures and the methods, and the Sangha, the living Sangha, is what we need in order to progress. We need to take refuge. In this text, we have the first three Vajra points, our Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha as result refuge. We're not looking at what we need, Buddha, in terms of how we need to understand Buddha for our progress, but what Buddha really is. What Buddha really is, what Dharma really is, what Sangha really is when we explore it so intelligently, so meaningfully. So there is nothing to do with a person. So let's take an example. Let's take an example of someone who is a very, very skilled teacher of something. So let's say a master surgeon. So they studied medicine, and then they became a doctor, and then they specialized in surgery. And then they've been doing surgery for so many years, they have so much experience that they're qualified to teach others what to do, because they've acquired that surgeonness. Or if somebody is like a great woodworker, cabinet maker, they go through a lot of training and a lot of experience. So it doesn't matter if that person is American, Chinese, Indian, Russian, male, female. When you get to that stage of mastery, the mastery makes you able to teach others. So in our particular world history, then Buddha was Indian, and he had a story very much related to the Indian culture he was in and so on. And he was a he. That's one person becoming Buddha. So we're not looking at that person and their journey. That would be like looking at this Indian man who studied medicine, or this Chinese woman who studied medicine. We're not looking at that. We're looking at what is it where they are, that would make them replaceable. The male Indian surgeon could say, "I'm tired, please take over," and the female Chinese surgeon can take over because she can do the same thing. She has the same skill. The skill in that circumstances is the same. So we're looking at what Buddha in that sense, ultimate refuge, and the same with Dharma, and the same with Sangha, what they are ultimately. So in the end of our understanding process, because ultima means in the end, but also in the end, not of your understanding process, but of your meditation experience progress, when you become Buddha, what will you become? It won't be about shining light and sitting under a tree and that kind of stuff we have in statues and images. What will you become? Buddha. And then what is it that you are, that you've become? This changeless, timeless state that enables teaching about anything and everything. Dharma. And that makes you, because you're Buddha, you are the Sangha of the Sangha. For us, the Sangha, we turn to them because they have the strength and the knowledge and the experience. Who do the Sangha turn to? Because they're still, each one of them, somewhere on the journey, they turn to the Buddha. The Buddha is the Sangha for the Sangha. I hope that makes sense. So, This is what we're going to look at. So then here in verse 4, we're going to start to study Buddha. And we're going to do that in this section on Buddha in 3 ways, which is very typical of this text and typical of a teaching style at the time. We start with one verse, which is very, very condensed. Everything's in this one verse, which means you can remember it. It's like packet soup. I was looking at a documentary the other day, people hunting snow leopards, hundreds and hundreds of hours in cold mountains, in tents, in the snow, and they've got packet soup. So you melt the snow, you boil the water, and this little packet of powder, you put it in the soup, and then it blows up, and you've got little baby vegetables and other things. You know, packet soup, Maggi or little packets, and it's powder that then becomes things. It's quite magical to watch. It's not terrific soup, but nevertheless, it's very, very condensed. So back in the past, not everyone was literate. They didn't read and write. They couldn't carry lots of texts around with them as objects, but they carried around texts in their heart as memorized knowledge. One of my teachers, Khenpo Sutim Jamso, when he was walking around all the time, was going through all the hundreds of things he'd memorized, learned by heart, keeping them alive. So this one verse has everything, but it's very condensed. So first we look at that verse, then for a couple of verses we look at unpacking the meaning. And then there's a final summary verse which puts the original text and the meaning together. I found myself that these verses on Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the key verse, the first one we study, are beautiful and they're worthy of remembering. Yeah. So I remember one of my very, very first teachers at Gelugpa Tulku in Dharamsala. He said to me, "We will put jewels in your mind." Now, I was quite into jewels at the time. I travelled across Asia and with the jeweller's eyeglass, looking at precious stones and semi-precious stones. No money to buy anything, but you can look at lots of things. And so I really was very, very fond. So when he said, "We will set jewels in your mind," I thought, oh, that's nice. It sounded very attractive. So this sort of verse 4, is a jewel to remind us of the absolute Buddha, the ultimate Buddha. So I'll read it, so you've got the transmission. I bow down to the beginningless, centerless, and infinite, to perfect peace, Buddha, fully self-awakened and self-blossomed, which, once purified and developed, shows the fearless, permanent path to bring realization to those with no realization, and which, wielding the supreme sword and Vajra of knowledge and compassionate love, hews down the seedlings of suffering and destroys the wall of doubt surrounded by the dense forests of mistaken views. So that's Buddha, right? This verse is our definition of Buddha. It's not elegant words, just a poetic praise. This is our definition once it's unpacked, you'll see it's very precise of what we really mean by Buddha. It's not a praise to the person that we do sometimes. We praise the 12 deeds of the Buddha, how you left the palace, how you lived as an ascetic. We're not talking about a person and their journey. That will be like talking about the Indian doctor, the Chinese doctor, or whatever. We're talking about what they achieved in the end, what they each became. So, in this text, I've used the word Buddha with a small b to indicate this, whatever we call it, this state of Buddhahood. I remember Taisutapa used to laugh, like, Buddhahood, hood, why hood? Hood's what goes over your head. Why Buddhahood? And so whatever we call it, none of it really works, calling it a state but anyway, we need some kind of a word. So Buddha with a small b. And we'll look at that in a second, the actual word Buddha, Bud in Sanskrit, what it means. But just here, just now, we're looking at this verse. So it's describing Buddha. Beginningless, centerless, infinite. See, like with people, Shakyamuni Buddha, we have a beginning, we have an end. We say he began his bodhisattva journey 3 cosmic eons ago. There are quite a lot of tales about the journey, and then at the end he becomes enlightened at the end of his life. There's no personal story left, gone. So the person's life has a beginning, middle, and end. When we talk about Buddha here, awakened mind, if you want to say, then it has no beginning, no center, and no end. So, what's the best way to do this? And it has all the other qualities that are in that verse. So, let's go on to verse 5, and we'll come back to verse 4. Now we're in the verses 5, 6, 7 that unpack the meaning of that first verse. And they tell us Buddhahood, so here we've got the word hood, Buddhahood or Buddha, has twofold value. Twofold value, twofold meaning, twofold point, twofold purpose, twofold benefit, twofold focus. It's a translator's problem. It's a translator's pull your hair out nightmare, because it says the twofold value here. But in Tibetan, the word is turn. Turn in English has 6 meanings, and they all apply. So which one do you pick when you're a translator? Or do you put all 6 with a slash between them? Which doesn't work. Very hard. With this word turn, it's so rich, incredibly rich. So it's a double, means a double, twofold. A double, the one meaning is value. Buddha has 2 values. I mean, it's valuable to us in 2 ways. But also dharma means meaning. It's the word that means meaning. Dharma. So there is meaning. Double meaning. People say, what's the meaning of life? That sense of meaning. And then turn means point. It's a double point. There are two key points. And then purpose means that. Benefit is often what's translated twofold benefit. Then it also means focus. That's very much like point. So this is the next thing we need to understand about Buddha. Buddha has double value, meaning, benefit, purpose. What are they? One is for ourselves, one is for everyone else. So it is the highest value for ourselves. If you could say somebody is, for instance, a valuable human being, why are they valuable? Because, or like precious, we might say, or it's just in terms of ranking, in terms of, excuse me, got a tickle in my throat. So, like somebody's wise, somebody's even wiser, or then we get the great minds, which are the Einsteins and the other people, which are amazing thinkers. Or then you get people who are amazing physically. They can do things in sports. Or some people who are amazing benefactors of humanity, who have set in motion something that helps hundreds, tens of thousands of people. So value, kind of the value of that person. Without them, so for ourselves, how do I express this without getting into hot water? I can't say, of the people here, you're more valuable than you, and you're more valuable than me, or I'm more valuable than you. But we're looking at what is of value in our life, what makes us special, what's worth striving after, and what do we strive after? We're coming back now to refuge in a way. What do people strive after? Muscles, strength. They can run. They can run a double marathon, or they can lift a huge weight, or they strive for knowledge, wisdom, cleverness, power over other people, power over objects, possessions. What do we value, and what makes us, what brings value to our own existence? So for us, Buddha, that we're starting to study now, is going to be the highest value for us, like the best you could ever become. There's nothing better, nothing more precious for you to become. And when we look at what this translates as, it's not obvious. And we need to know, because most of you have taken Bodhisattva vow, or you're on the Bodhisattva path. What does it mean? I want to become Buddha to help everybody. So we need to know what Buddha is. And if we're going to invest this life and all our future lives, and as much as we can, every action, every day, to become Buddha, we need to know what Buddha is. Otherwise, that wouldn't make much sense. So this is the most valuable thing for us. And when we look back at that first verse about the Buddha, verse 4, The words, I bow down to the beginningless, centerless and infinite, to perfect peace, Buddha, fully self-awakened and self-blossomed, then those 3 lines express what is most valuable for a bodhisattva. To become beginningless, centerless and infinite, perfectly at peace, and fully self-awakened and self-blossomed. We will find there are 3 areas of value for oneself. It's called benefit for oneself, value for oneself, the whole point for oneself, all those different meanings of Dharma. I remember as a restless teenager with my younger brother, sometimes we keep saying, what's the point? What's the point? Discovering life and thinking, what's the point of this? So for bodhisattvas, this is the point. 3 points. Becoming beginningless, centerless and endless. Becoming peace. Becoming self-awakened and self-blossomed. That's the value, the benefit for ourselves. It's why, for our own good, we will strive to become Buddhas. And then the rest of verse 4, which once purified and developed shows the fearless permanent path to bring realization. We have 3 areas of value for others. So verse 4 is our condensed summary. We'll unpack it into 3 areas of value for oneself, 3 areas of value, benefit for others. And let's look at the first one. It's not nice, just nice poetry, beginningless, centerless, endless. It is mind-blowingly deep. So, can you imagine beginningless? I mean, you understand the word, don't you? Beginning, beginning, things start. Beginningless, doesn't have one. Okay, you got that. You got the words. But can you experience it? Can you bring it to life in your imagination? Never, never beginning. Try and go there. It's a bit of a problem. Please, if you can do it, please let me know. It will be valuable information for my teaching. And also, there are in the scriptures, Buddhist scriptures, 14 questions the Buddha refused to answer. Only 14. I mean, he replied to most everything and everyone, happy to help when he could, with words, words, concepts, ideas. That's all we can do with speech. But of those 14 questions he didn't answer, almost half were about how did it all begin. And so many times, in my own life as a translator and teacher, so many people ask the questions, yes, but how did it all begin? Okay, I'm a stream of consciousness, I'm a samsara, I've got a history, I've got karma, I've been going for hundreds of lifetimes, but where did it must have begun somewhere. If basically everything, the mind is pure, that's what we're saying, everything's pure. So you see some of that in the deep teachings. Everything's always been perfectly pure. And well, how did we lose it in the first place? What went wrong? And you don't just find that it's human thought. Creation stories, the beginning. What happened in the Garden of Eden, all that kind of things. How did it start? In the Christian creation story, Adam and Eve, they're fine. They're in paradise. God's okay with it. Everything's fine. And then something goes wrong. Quest for knowledge. And they get thrown out and the whole story starts. So this feeling of the suffering, the personal story, the problems in the world, they must have started somehow, somewhere. And so people seeing that Buddha was the wisest person on earth, the wisest person they could ever ask, and they asked him, how did it start? And he wouldn't answer. There were various reasons, we don't have time to go into them here, but basically they were the questions that people, can you say, were asking Buddha. And when you try to imagine beginningless, so beginnings has to be in the past, doesn't it? I mean, it can't be in the future because whatever you are now must have begun. But if it's beginningless, what does that mean? It can mean a couple of things. It could mean that you could just keep going back and back and back and back. And wherever you got to, there will always be before that and before that. So you never get to a beginning. It could be beginningless in that sense. In which case, as you're trying to work it out, you'll disappear into space forever, because you'll be going back and back and back and before the back and before the before. Then that's one way. Another way is that maybe there wasn't a beginning. Maybe the need for a beginning is a human search because of the paradigms in which we think. Now, this is a very interesting point because it's where modern physics, or not that modern these days, has been going for a long time, about time and about our own perception of things. This universe of random particles and space in which somehow, on one level, we are humans. You go down microscopic and we're just energy, but on this level we're humans, we make sense. And you go up and bigger to the level of universes, we don't exist. We're like not even specks of dust. But on this level we exist in our own world of perception with the limits of our five senses, the electromagnetic spectrum, and we've made some kind of sense of it with these brains that think in the way they do. So for us, there are beginnings and ends and stories to what we perceive. So a beginning is a human description, but not necessarily an actual reality. So science has understood that we bring our own human paradigms, our own conditioning and history to the world we witness in terms of analyzing it. So beginningless. And then the same, no end. No end. We have to explore ourselves. I mean, not just blah, blah, blah words. Do you have in your mind the idea of an end? And if not, can you imagine endless? What that means. We need to work with this, otherwise we won't understand Buddha, ultimate Buddha. You can understand historical Buddha easy, but if you want to understand the real Buddha, the Buddha became, like people become a master surgeon, you have to understand first, out of the 6 qualities, beginningless, centerless, endless. You have to work with it to start to let your jaw drop in amazement, because it really is extraordinary. Once you contemplate, once you bring this into your deepest meditation, do you have an idea of an end? Once in the lunch queue at Samiling, in the time when we had a very simple dining room, and Akon Rinpoche queued up with everybody else. I was in the queue, and the lunch was late, so we were all just kind of standing there. And one visitor lady, she asked Akon Rinpoche, she said, Rinpoche, can I ask you something? So he just turned around, he said, yeah, sure. She said, Rinpoche, what's it like when it all ends? So all of our ears were pricking up. What's the answer? Well, we're going to catch some real kind of experiential gem here. And he turned around and he looked at her. It was quite a strong, not smile. And he said, you think it ever ends? And we're all just kind of, oh. So, beginning and end. So, Buddhahood, he says, I bow down to what is without beginning, without end. So, of course, no center. If there's no beginning, there's no end, there's no center. So we need to work with that. And then the easy part is to understand it by its opposite. This is the easy part, and it's a very, very it's a very meaningful, it's a very valuable part. Everything we know, we do, has a beginning, a middle, and an end. When we look mainly at karma, cause and effect. Out of nowhere we do an action. If the action can make karma, then the karma has started. And that karma can last within us for years, lifetimes, tens, hundreds of lifetimes, until when it meets the right triggering circumstances, it becomes an experience for us. We do an action, cause. Later on, we experience the result, but that karma, we carry it all the time, invisibly, silently, until it manifests as life experience. And then when all of the experience that we've generated by making karma is finished, it ends. So your life, my life just now, is hundreds, thousands of overlapping karmas from what we did in past lives. Some little, tiny, weak karmas, some huge karmas that affect us for lifetimes on end. And that's who we are. That's why we're all so unique. We are, it's like woven threads of thousands, millions of threads of karma. Some of our karmas are coming to an end. Some of them are only just beginning. Some are right in the middle. But everything that we experience outside there in the world or inside us has a beginning. Beginning means it wasn't there before. There was nothing there. And then that reality started. like your parents, for instance. Before you were conceived, they weren't your parents. And then you were conceived, and from that moment on, they were your parents. And depending on how long they lived, you grew up, they were part of you, your life. Then they die, and they're gone. Everything we experience out there, everything that happens inside us, everything has a beginning and an end, and in the middle, a duration. We don't really say middle. Middle is just a poetic word here. It means duration, while it lasts. And so then we're looking at Buddha as being beyond that and without that. Now, technically, in Buddhist terms, whatever has a beginning and an end is called a conditioned phenomena. It's a samskara. It's a coming together of causes and conditions. If we had a lot of time, which we don't, we'd look into causes and conditions. See, this is Buddha nature teachings are like a masterclass, really. They assume that we've got all the other Buddhist information well digested. And then we can use terminology and everyone understands. Prime causes, secondary conditions. A prime cause has the programming for the result, like the seed of a plant. The only thing in the entire universe that has the programming to produce that result. The only thing that can produce a daisy seed. Nothing else. No laboratory, no other plant, nothing can make a daisy except the seed. That's got the genetics, programming. But all alone, it doesn't produce the result. It needs heat, light, fertilizer, soil, water. But then all the other seeds need those things too. So they're called secondary conditions. So when a prime cause meets the appropriate secondary conditions, then a reality emerges and endures, and at one point will come to an end. So that is called a conditioned reality, made by prime cause and secondary conditions, lasts as long as it lasts. Our existence, now the Buddha says that all conditioned phenomena attract and are endowed with suffering. It's one of the, can you say, it's the four great statements called the four seals of Dharma, the four stamps of authenticity of Dharma teaching. All conditioned phenomena attract and have suffering. So now we're looking at what is not that. What has no cause, no beginning, no prime cause, and keep that in mind now. In later chapters, we'll be coming back to this in a different way. But just now, what is the value for us of becoming Buddha? Is that it is not a conditioned phenomenon. Now that sounds boring, doesn't it? Like if it said, if you become Buddha, you become rich, handsome, and then you can live for 100,000 eons, and you can describe it. That might sound attractive. We call that Deva realms. It's not what it's about. If you say, I want to become totally unconditioned, free of all conditioned phenomena, within samsara, it doesn't sound attractive. once you realize what a fraud samsara is, how much suffering people go through, all sentient beings, the price they pay for happiness, and so on and so on. As time goes by, you'll get sick and fed up with it, and you will long for what is pure and what isn't, created by causes and conditions, and that automatically attracts suffering to itself and has innate, inherent suffering. It's wonderful to be alive and be human, but you have to be reborn. You have to be in a womb. You have to go back to school. You have to grow up, and at the end of it, you have to get old and fade away and lose your faculties. It's a big price to pay for being human. And of course, it's got its joys and its wonders at a cost. And especially when we zoom out, look at what it takes to become reborn human, causes and conditions. So the more we realize what's going on, the truth of it, the truth of suffering and the causes of suffering, the more we will long for what is timeless, changeless, pure and perfect. So the technical meaning in the Dharma of words for the first of the three qualities of value for oneself is to not be a conditioned phenomenon. The second meaning, the second value for oneself, it says in verse 4, to perfect peace. And for this we need to understand the meaning of the word peace. And different Buddhist traditions understand peace differently. So peace means freedom from concept. As those of you who meditate quite a bit may appreciate. Freedom from concept. Now, in fact, that's how we translate it. In most books, you'll find it that way. I don't know what you understand by the word concept. Probably thoughts, ideas, but the term here is larger. It means mental activity. At this stage, you might not want to be free from mental activity. You might think it's like being dead, isn't it? Maybe you enjoy thinking, imagining, all of those things. And somebody came and said, well, I was reading something a couple of weeks ago about a guy, I forget, in America. He thought that lobotomy was a solution to many people's psychological problems, and they defined lots and lots of, like women who didn't obey their husbands and things like this. It was defined as being mentally unwell, and he lobotomized thousands of people, tens of thousands maybe, lobotomized, destroying it. It was terrible. So if somebody came along and said, oh, how about I take away your ability to think, feel, imagine, all of that, I mean, you wouldn't want it, probably. But when we meditate and we get to know our mind and we start to get sacred experience, just first of all, peaceful experience, we learn how stillness feels. But then if you are lucky enough to be in a living lineage, you feel the blessing of the lineage, you start to experience sacred states, special things happen, and then you'll realize that your busy mind, your busy historical mind, is a bit of an obstacle to something which is so wonderful. It's clarity, it's light, it's natural. And this mind of ours is just going on all the time. It can't stop talking. It can't stop reacting in all different sorts of ways. So when we say peace, then it means a natural peace, because all of our need to think has been sorted out. It's been replaced by something far better, which is direct, clear wisdom. If you have direct, clear wisdom that doesn't depend on thought, then you don't need thought. Thought is very, very primitive. Thought is so primitive. I mean, of course, within thought, there can be wrong thought, there can be stupid thought, there can be slow thought, and there can be wonderful thinkers. But compared to a clear mind that doesn't need thought, it is so lumbering and heavy. It's like you can imagine primitive carts. When they first invented wheels, it was amazing. You could have a cart with a sort of a more or less round, heavy wooden wheel that will go over a very rough path. So you can boom, boom, lumber along, pulled by bullocks, like this. That's one kind of transport. These days you can have a helicopter. Don't know if you've ever ridden in a helicopter for fun, and you can just go down there and up there and hover here. It's a bit different from a bullock cart. So within thought, there are different levels, skills of thought. We rely on it. This whole talk relies on it, doesn't it? It's what I'm doing, blah, 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 and you're listening and something's happening. But through practice, you will start to find a wonderful, transcendent clarity, purity of mind. And thoughts can only go one at a time. And that leads to and that leads to You can't multi-think. You can't have two thoughts at the same time. So it's incredibly primitive as a mechanism of knowledge and wisdom. And clarity of mind just has panoramic, got it, knows it, beautifully, instantly. So now we've had, and I must finish there, two qualities of Buddha today. Now when we look in more detail, and according to Abhidharma and according to Abhidharma for the Mahayana teachings, then we have two, what we call two obscurations. The first one is our karma, caused by our klesha, our mind poisons, caused by our ignorance of ego. So they make our creations. When we talk about creation, not to be a creation, we're talking about our karma, getting free from our personal karma. When we talk about being at peace, we're looking at the second obscuration, which is not the karmic obscuration. It's called the cognitive obscuration. It's where our conceptual knowledge is an obstacle to real knowledge, direct, immediate clarity of mind. So knowledge is the obstacle to knowledge. It's weird, but conceptual knowledge, thinking knowledge, although it's so useful to a certain point, it actually is blocking a much more wonderful degree of clarity. So when we say peace, we mean we've reached the state of dealing with all those concepts. And now if we look experientially in terms of practice and Dharma practice, it means we're at peace with ourselves, because all of our conflicting ideas, our conflicting values, our conflicting history has been sorted. And because we're at peace with ourselves, we're at peace with everyone. It's not a state of peace, an artificial shamatha-induced gone absorption. It means that we are no longer the victims of our own concepts and emotions. Because we have this clarity of wisdom. Okay, so we have to stop there today through these verses. As you can see, this text could be a very, very, very long haul. And really, I've kept it as simple as possible to explain the terms that we have here. But anyway, whatever was good and useful today, let's share it with everybody and feel that somehow we've received a gift of understanding. And that gift is for everyone's benefit. And if only we could just give it and take away suffering. May whatever virtue was created by this session contribute to the state of omniscience being attained by our main enemy, our mind's defilements, being completely defeated. Through that, may each and every sentient being become free from the ocean of existence, troubled by its waves of rebirth, aging, sickness and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it's not arisen. In those in whom it has arisen, may its development know no setbacks. On the contrary, may it increase ever more and more. Through this virtue, may we quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. So now over to you. I don't know if you've got, I could see quite a few messages coming up. I didn't have time to read them, otherwise I forget what I'm saying midstream, but I look at them after the session.
Hi, Ken. Thanks for teaching. Just a quick one. Would you mind providing a little bit more explanation about the difference between the second piece, perfect peace of Buddhahood, and then when you described the third point, you largely described it in terms of peace as well.
I think I only did 2 points today.
Oh, okay. That explains why it seems to me like
no beginning, no middle, no end. That's about being free from karma and everything that causes karma, or most of what causes karma. The peace is being free from the cognitive obscuration, which is mainly conceptual activity of mind. But it's all our regular. We didn't get the third one, which is, we do it next time, but it's called self-blossoms, self-aware. And this means we no longer depend on other for whatever there is of those first two qualities. They come from within, basically. They are the nature of mind. Until we become Buddha, we do depend. We take refuge on teachers, gurus, Buddhas, and we depend on many things. So, but for the wisdom, it's there automatically. It's wonderful. I mean, you've got perfect guru insight.
Ken, I think I'd understood that when you talked about twofold value. Initially, I understood that as talking about the qualities of beginningless, endless, and so on, and then the self-awakened thing as being not dependent on. Well, you put it nicely as free from, or not dependent on conditioned phenomena. And then it felt like you were talking about a third benefit, almost the free from concepts, the free from
No,
activities.
sorry,
That's how it seemed to me.
yeah, it's not like that. And so let me tell you how it is. Okay.
Right.
Buddhahood has benefit for yourself. It's the ultimate benefit for us, and it's the ultimate benefit for others. That's the twofold value.
Okay.
In terms of benefit for oneself, there are three areas: beginningless, centerless, endless, peace, and then not realized through others. Mm-hmm. In the benefit for others, there are three areas that we'll come to next time. Mm-hmm. So the twofold benefit, the dön nyi, it's called in Tibetan, twofold benefit, is benefit for oneself, benefit for others. Benefit for oneself is three areas that we just did.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful clarification, Ken. Thank you.
Yeah. It's very Tibetan. I mean, Tibetans categorize, subcategorize, and so on. Myron, are you?
Hi, I'd like to say a few things. And you probably heard the song or the introduction by Nagarjuna. Whatever arises interdependently has no cessation and no arising, no extinction and no permanence, no coming and no going, is neither different nor the same. So this is when people ask when does it begin, then they're believing something is there, like a dream, like an illusion, like a city on the TV. That's how birth, that's how living, that's how dying is taught to be.
So dreams don't start and don't end?
Siddha Rinpoche said to leave the relative in the relative and the absolute in the absolute.
No, don't jump to another one.
Nagarjuna. No.
You're quoting Nagarjuna. I'm keeping you on Nagarjuna. Don't jump to Tai Situpa.
You're talking about the ultimate, but you're talking about
saying it has no beginning and no end, and then you said dreams. Do dreams start or do dreams never end?
That's the relative. We're describing the ultimate, and you're confusing into the relative.
But then Nagarjuna, how is he describing the ultimate? In relative words, isn't he?
I'm not talking. You have to have the ultimate concepts to deal with the ultimate. So there is no beginning.
Yeah. No, this is fine, Myron.
Relative, there's a beginning, middle, and end, but ultimately things do not arise. They don't come from themselves. They don't come from something else. They don't come from both, and they don't arise without a cause.
Yes.
So nothing truly arises.
Let me stop you there, Myron. I really appreciate, but let me stop you there. Because whatever you quote from these wonderful sources, whether it's what you just quoted from Mahamudra sources, whether it's what you quoted earlier from Nagarjuna's second turning of the wheel of Dharma sources, or what we're dealing with, third turning of the wheel of Dharma, Asanga's teaching, Maitreya's teaching, they're all very true and they're all very valuable. But this is why Dharma is a path we have to understand where each of these is situated. Like you said yourself, we need a certain level of concepts to describe the ultimate, which is beyond concept, and so on. But it gets tricky if you mix them up. You can't use the yardstick or the benchmark of Nagarjuna to evaluate Asanga's teaching, or the other way around.
No,
And
they
the
all fit together.
Mahamudra method,
They all fit together.
they all fit together
They
in a
all fit
wonderful
together.
thing which we call the Dharma. But each thing has its place. That's the beauty of it, understanding each thing where it does, where it sits, not just in terms of like these labels, Nagarjuna second turning, Asanga third turning, but in our own journey.
Okay, let me just say it this way in my own words then. People want to think that in the relative truth something begins, but the ultimate truth is beyond time. The Buddha never answered this because he didn't believe there was anything there to begin. If you think that it's a beginning, then you're asserting that there's something there that begun. But if you realize that everything is appearance emptiness, then that's a whole different ballgame. Like Siddha Rinpoche said, leave the relative in the relative and the ultimate in the ultimate. Don't talk about relative dreams to describe the ultimate wisdom.
Yeah.
So that's all I need to say.
Great.
So that's why there's no beginning, is because there's nothing there. They're all interdependent appearances. And that's what Khenpo teaches.
Yeah, like all of the teaching, it's true in its time and place.
So that's why there's no beginning.
That's true for you very much now.
Okay, well, thank you. Your teachings are very good. I appreciate everything.
Yeah. No, thank you. No,
it's really wonderful. And
it's good
I've
because
been encouraging them all
it's
along.
nice. It's nice to have a bit of tic-tac like that because it's stimulating for people. I mean, I know your bit, and all of these things is so true. But then what's wonderful is that in our own journey, the different truths of all the levels, schools and so on, teachers, they resonate sometimes so powerfully. When
Oh yeah, they all come together.
Yeah.
And that's the wonderful thing about technology, is that it brings everybody together.
Yeah, Neil.
Yeah, hi Ken. I suppose I'm going to be my pedantic self again, but when you were talking about the natural progression or natural sequence of the seven Vajra abodes, you asked us to raise our hands if we understood that Dharma came naturally from Buddha. And I didn't put my hand up because I can see that it makes sense that Buddha Shakyamuni gave the teachings on the Dharma, but I still remember that when Gyaltsapa came to Dublin to teach the Four Noble Truths, that one of the first things he did was saying it's really the four truths of the noble ones that was always there. So like the Dharma was there before Buddha, or it's more, I was going to say more important, that's the wrong word, but if setting up a shrine, for example, the Dharma is the highest level. So that's why I didn't put my hand up.
Well, when we get to the end of the third chapter, and we're looking, after we've gone through these verses, at the three refuges in this more ultimate sense, not ultimate sense, more ultimate sense. And then one thing we'll be looking at, because we've gone through the verses, is that you can't separate Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. Because you have to use words, words. We have to use words. But you can say, like, if you say the Dharma was always there, it's like the truth that's in the universe, or the natural truths of everything, and the Buddha expresses those, like the truths are higher. But Buddha is the expression of those. Not Buddha expresses those. the way the natural Dharma expresses itself is as Buddha. When we become Buddha, we become those truths. You can't separate. This is what but first we need to go step by step. This is why, Asanga gave us 400 verses so that we can work systematically in the way that we can work, we can think and understand, and gradually the whole thing comes together. That's Asanga's text. That's the ideas. The real transmission of Buddha as Dharma comes for the meditators, who practice. So when we come to Maitreya, the teacher who really gave our lineage Asanga's teachings, then he is like Mahaprabhu Milarepa. He is showing his disciples, sharing with them Buddha mind, which is at one and the same time Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, ultimate Sangha. You can't separate them. How could you? So Buddha is not somebody then. This is what I was trying to say. It's not somebody who gives us a teaching. Buddha is the awakenedness, the awakened state that is the teaching. No way you can separate them, except for us, because that's the way we work. And yeah, we'll come to it more.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. Hi, Ken.
Who's speaking?
Here, Mariana.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hi.
Hi. Gotcha. See, couldn't find you on the screen. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you very much for the teaching. It's amazing it's very shocking teaching. A question is if it's good to contemplate these qualities when we take refuge and then take a little time to think about this beginningless when we practice, when we take refuge.
Yeah, if you can. It's not vital. If you take refuge, how can I say, traditionally, according to the teachings of, say, Gampopa about what refuge is and how we take it, then it says for some time before, ideally a couple of days, the teacher will explain the meaning of refuge so that you know what you're taking refuge in, so that you're not just doing it in ignorance or blindness. You really want to take refuge. So there we need to understand what we call Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the three refuges, as a cause. So we need to know historical Buddha, if we can, something of the three kayas. And then also about Buddha nature, we need to have some confidence that it's possible for me to become Buddha. There's something inside us, the possibility, the seed, the potential that can become Buddha. That's all you need to know if you know well enough to take refuge in a responsible way. These teachings about the ultimate nature of the refuges are a bonus. If you can understand them, that is also very helpful. It's not necessary, and it's actually ideal if one does have a personal teacher, because I like the word you said, it's shocking. For some people, it's reassuring when they hear these Buddha nature teachings or these verses that I just started. We've only just started Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. For some people, if they couldn't hear that and get this kind of cosmic understanding of the wisdom that's always there and the love that's always there, then all the rest seems like religion. And you might think, well, do I want to become a Buddhist? Do I want to take refuge? Go through a ceremony and all the sort of believe in a person in history that we only know so much about. It's kind of a step into a religion for some people. So when they hear the Buddha nature teachings and how universal and timeless and all embracing it is, then they think, well, that's the real Buddha. Okay, I can go for the relative thing because that's my path. Other people might find it's scary, shocking, off-putting, and they much prefer, no. Buddha was in India, he taught the Dharma, the people carry it, and you can get a grip on that. You can make a lot of sense. You know where you stand, and all the kind of cosmic stuff that's beyond any kind of manifestation is too much. Depends on the person. So then your teacher would tell you what you need to know at the time.
Mika wants to ask a question.
Oh, yeah, right. Hello, Mika. Sorry, I don't see everyone on the screen. Yeah.
Hi. Yeah. Thanks for who was saying that I'm having my hand up.
Yeah.
Friendly. Yeah. This is so amazing again. I've been thinking about this your old like few years ago. Your this what you're doing is online and trying to bring in some kind of red line here. And I have this question about this. There is this different ways to go forward, and I give a little expansion example because in Thich Nhat Hanh is doing everything very simple, like so simple, like this seed. You say something like, what is the beginning? And it was in my mind that there is always some kind of seed. It doesn't matter what religion, but there's always seed. As a ceremony teacher, I always think that if there is no seed, there is no tea. And if there is no sun, there is no tea. And if there is no spring water, there is no tea medicine. And if you don't, it's like that the seed is some kind of beginning. And that was something if you ask that, if someone have some kind of view about what is the beginning. So I say seed, and you also said it afterwards. Starting to talk about the seed. So I'm wondering about the seeds that my Qigong teacher in Bali is teaching about. That even his master in Qigong and this traditional Chinese medicine, and he has been doing like in this monasteries Qigong and in China and this old lineage stuff. And he said that even if you learn like 20 Qigong practices like perfect, but you only need one to achieve enlightenment, because you only do this one. It's enough, because that's what is the beginning and the end, and that's one where you really focus, and everything else is supporting. And Thich Nhat Hanh says about this Zen, that you only need mindfulness breathing, and you just water the mindfulness breath every day, and you can already achieve everything if you understand that correctly, and all the other teachings come around. And now this Maitreya text, this amazing text that is, it's like only reading the energy is already like starting to happen things. And is this like in this Tibetan Buddhist system that if you learn, because I understand this is really important text, and I see that it's something very special in this, that is this possible in this Tibetan system in Karma Kakwe, that if you know this one text really well, and like same way I explain about this Thich Nhat Hanh and this Qigong master, that, and if you know this one text and you master that and you build everything other around it, like you specialize in one thing, like Thich Nhat Hanh people specialize in mindfulness, seeding the mindfulness, spreading seeds, like watering them, and this Qigong master is only doing one practice and mastering that. So is this in this practice that we master this Maitreya text very well? Is it already everything, and is it possible to achieve this path in this? Because if wanting to do things simple that focus something, and this umbrella is so big, it's like almost droning, almost coming too much everything, just trying to have like some kind of seed and do that well, and then build other things around it that doesn't go like, how do I say, doesn't lost in self about too much knowledge. This is the point.
Yeah, there's a difference between, yeah, thanks for all you said. There's a difference between theory and practice. So, for instance, Thich Nhat Hanh, the particular school of Zen he belongs to, use this text. It's part of the text, but the text tells us about what we're doing. The practice is what we actually do. So what we're doing in this course is theory, explaining part of this huge thing we call Dharma, which has so much knowledge. This isn't practice instruction. So the practice instruction that corresponds to this text is anything that's on what we call a Vajrayana level, including Mahamudra and Dzogchen, Tibetan system. So there you can just do one practice. It can be very simple, not one practice, but one line of practice, because you always need to do beginning practice, then take that further. But it can be very simple. You just do one thing, and that can take you a long way, perhaps all the way. But here we're looking at theory, the theory that's behind the practice. So this is behind all Tibetan practice. It's behind quite a lot of the Zen schools, not all of them. Yeah. And we learn what we can. And it depends how far you want to go in this life as well. Our greatest specialized meditation teacher oh, isn't it wonderful? From the 1970s, 80s, and into the 90s, he was called Kalu Rinpoche. He was the one, Karmapa, 16th Karmapa, said everyone should take him as the authority on meditation. And of course, you can do simple meditation with a little bit of knowledge or a little bit more of knowledge. But he said if somebody wants to really give all their life one-pointedly to meditation practice in retreat or whatever, like Milarepa, or like the great masters, then there are, well, he said there are 3 texts you need to know and you need to master. Otherwise, your meditation won't make it. And so this is one of those 3 texts. Basically, he's saying you need to know about Buddha nature and these teachings about Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, qualities, activities. Without a good understanding of that, Vajrayana practice will be just like theistic practice, be like Hindus and other people who worship something other. We need to know the truth of what is everywhere, truth of ourselves. So we need to know this text. We need to know the basic Dharma teachings, relative truth teachings from Gampopa in our case, in our tradition. And then when our practice is advanced and you have lots of profound experiences, and in particular inner experiences, energetic experiences, and so on, then there's another text which is about channels, chakras, the microcosm, the macrocosm, relative ultimate from Karmapa. That's the 3rd text. Otherwise, even if you're doing one practice, very simply, the same practice year after year, it will make things happen. And if you don't know what's happening inside you, and where your energies are taking you and how they're giving you this experience and so on, then you can go quite wrong.
Yes, thank you. It's one quite wonderful thing what you said about a few years ago. There was some old nomad woman or something, and I think it was you say about she was doing like one mantra only all her life. Like I think it was like Tara mantra, and she didn't know, but she was doing it from the heart all her life wrong. And then she achieved enlightenment. And then this makes my mind like because there's so many texts and this remain text of this what you said about this Rinpoche, what is that main text need to know. And then there is this one nomad woman maybe there with the yaks in the mountain and
Yeah, but
something.
I know
No,
that story, but she didn't become Buddha.
she didn't.
Well, no,
Because,
no, she didn't become Buddha, but she was getting a lot of benefit from her practice. And she
okay.
was saying the mantra wrong. And because she was going around the temple all day long, doing the mantra wrong, then some Lama said, we need to tell her that she's doing it wrong. And so he went down, he said, it's not this, but it's that. And she was a bit shocked, but she learned the way the Lama said, but it had shaken her confidence so much. See, they were clairvoyant and they could see that she was doing Tara mantra. They could see Tara's presence all around her and that she was getting a lot of benefit from it. But as soon as she started doing the correct mantra, but shaken, so she'd lost her confidence, she was just walking around the temple making noises, but the Tara presence wasn't there anymore. And so then the Lama, they talked about it, and he said, go down and tell her, do it like you did it before. It's okay. And she did it like she did it before. And because she'd had so much faith, it didn't really matter. The mantra is just a means of communication with the reality of Tara. So she'd already was getting some benefit, but she wasn't enlightened. We can have Tara's presence, and it can still take us many lifetimes to get enlightened. It's already amazing, but it doesn't mean that you're enlightened because you feel the presence. Presence is presence. It's not becoming beginningless, centerless, and endless, becoming perfectly at peace, becoming fully self-awakened and self-blossomed. That is the top of the top, the most wonderful of the most wonderful. Okay, it's time to
Thank you.
have lunch. So thank you all very much and see you next week. Take good.
Thank you, Ken.
Take good care.
Oh, very much. Thanks, Ken.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Ken. Take care.
Everyone. Draw now. Draw everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.